Hey guys, welcome to the first video of our basic tech series. We're going to be going through chapter 1, Who is an Addict, for this first video, and also have some commentary on it. Um, so we're going to get started with chapter 1, Who is an Addict? Many of us do not have to think twice about this question. We know. Our whole life and thinking was centered in drugs in one form or another. The getting and using and finding ways and means to get more. We live to use and use to live. Very simply, an addict is a man or woman whose life is controlled by drugs. We are people in the grip of a continuing and progressive illness whose ends are always the same: jails, institutions, and death. Those of us who found the program of Narcotics Anonymous do not have to think twice about the question, who is an addict? We know. The following is our experience. As addicts, we are people whose use of any mind altering, mood changing substance causes a problem in the area of life. Addiction is a disease that involves more than the use of drugs. Some of us believe that our disease was present long before we used. I'm just going to stop there for a second. I know me, I can look back and see addictive behaviors before I ever picked up a substance. Isolation, trying to escape reality through like fantasy in my own head, uh, being dishonest, um, just a lot of different things that I can now see played a big part in my addiction once I picked up, but were awfully often obviously present before I ever picked up a substance. And once I picked up a substance, they kicked in full gear, and well, the rest is history, as they say. So continuing on, most of us did not consider ourselves addicted before coming to Narcotics Anonymous program. The information available to us came from misinformed people. As long as we could stop using for a while, we thought we were all right. We looked at the stopping, not the using. As our addiction progressed, we thought of stopping less and less. Only in desperation did we ask ourselves, could it be the drugs? Again, always focusing on the stopping and not the actual behaviors and everything else behind it. I always like to say, drugs are just a symptom. They're far from the underlying cause of the problem. All my character defects are the real issue. Trauma plays a big role for many of us, me included. Um, and the drugs were just our way to escape, my way to escape and cope. Sorry. We did not choose to become addicts. We suffer from a disease that expresses itself in ways that are antisocial and that make detection, diagnosis, and treatment difficult. I'm a big isolator. I'm a big antisocial person, believe it or not. But that's my disease. And that's why I try so hard to push against that and do the exact opposite, which is why I'm here today. Our disease isolated us from people except when we were getting, using, and finding ways and means to get more. Hostile, resentful, self centered, and self seeking, we cut ourselves off from the outside world. Anything not completely familiar became alien and dangerous. Our world shrank, and isolation became our life. We used in order to survive. It was the only way of life that we knew. I don't know about you, but for me, when I am using, I get this, I'm in a bubble, and it's normal to me, although it's completely outside of society norms that no average person, right minded person would feel like the way I'm living is normal. To me, it is. And it blows my mind looking back at some of the things that I was okay with during my active addiction. Some of us used, misused, and abused drugs and still did not consider ourselves addicts. Through all of this, we kept telling ourselves, I can handle it. Our misconceptions about the nature of addiction included visions of violence, street crime, dirty needles, in jail. Those are some examples of things I know I become okay with in active addiction that now gives me the chills. When our addiction was treated as a crime or a moral deficiency, we became rebellious and were driven deeper into isolation. Some of the highs felt great, but eventually the things that we had to do to continue using reflected desperation. We were caught in the grip of our disease. We were forced to survive any way that we could. We manipulated people and tried to control everything around us. We lied, stole, cheated, and sold ourselves. We had to have drugs regardless of the cost. Failure and fear began to invade our lives. Very true. Again, um, manipulation, lying, cheating, stealing, the controlling everything is a big part in my story. Looking back, and it's another aspect of my life today that I lean into my higher power, which I choose to call God, um, very strongly today. And I try to put things in His hands that are outside of my control. And the Serenity Prayer is more than a few words strung together that sound good. You know, I say it, I try to practice it, and I mean it very often. One aspect of our addiction was our inability to deal with life on life's terms. We tried drugs and combination of drugs to cope with a seemingly hostile world. We dreamed of finding a magic formula that would solve our ultimate problem, ourselves. The fact was that we could not use any mind altering or mood changing substance, including marijuana and alcohol, successfully. Drugs ceased to make us feel good. Again, in that short little paragraph, um, I always said that I was not built for the world. I viewed the world as a very dark and ugly place, but it was more the world that I had created around myself that I was seeing that was like that. I now know the world and life in general was a beautiful thing that it's a gift to us all, and I only hope that more of us can find that. Um, and the problem being me. For years, I tried to solve my problem alone. It wasn't until I came to the realization that I am indeed my problem, and therefore I cannot be my problem and my solution at the same time. Not to say I can't and don't have to work for it, but I have to look outside of myself, ask for help to get the solution. At times, we were defensive about our addiction and justified our right to use, especially when we had legal prescriptions. We were proud of the sometimes legal and often bizarre behavior that typified our using. We forgot about the times we had sat alone and were consumed by fear and self pity. We fell into a pattern of selective thinking. We only remember the good drug experiences. We justified and rationalized the things that we did not keep from being sick or going crazy. We ignored the times that life seemed to be a nightmare. We avoided the real reality of our addiction. And that right there, again, the self pity, the selective thinking. That's why they say play the tape all the way through. Because often I'll look back, still to this day, I can do this, and I'll think about the few good times, the few good experiences, the initial part of it before all the consequences come down on me, and which always happens. But I have a tendency, my mind has a built in forgetter. I'll forget the consequences, the jail, the bad parts. And, it'll make it seem like it's a good idea at first. But today, I try to constantly remind myself to play that tape all the way through. Higher mental and emotional functions, such as conscious and the ability to love, were sharply affected by our use of drugs. Living skills were reduced to an animal level. Our spirit was broken. The capacity to feel human was lost. This seems extreme, but many of us have been in this state of mind. Yeah, been there, definitely, for sure. Been to some pretty low rock bottoms, and I know I'm not alone in that. Um, and if you haven't been so low, you don't have to. Learn from others, and please trust me. We were constantly searching for the answer. that person, place, or thing that would make everything all right. We lack the ability to cope with daily living. As our addiction progressed, many of us found ourselves in and out of institutions. Jails, institutions, and death. I know myself, have been through the first two plenty of times, skated on a third a few too many times. And it's where it ultimately goes every single time if you're truly an addict, which I am. These experiences indicated that there was something wrong with our lives. We wanted an easy way out. Some of us thought of suicide. Our attempts were usually feeble and only helped to contribute to our feelings of worthlessness. We were trapped in the illusion of what if only, and just one more time. When we did seek help, we were only looking for the absence of pain. It's emotional, physical, mental pain. And the thing is our addiction itself is fueling the pain most of the time. So we get stuck in this endless cycle. We hurt, we use, we hurt worse, we use again. And the suicidal thing, unfortunately, I know people who have followed through with it. It's very sad. I have contemplated it more times than I really want to bring up. It's where it brings us. It brings me to my knees every single time. It's very dark. It's very sad. And it's why we're here today trying to get out, stay out of that state of mind. We had retained good physical health many times, only to lose it by using again. Our track record shows that it is impossible for us to use successfully, no matter how well we may appear to be in control. Using drugs always brings us to our knees. Yeah, just said that. It's really crazy when you read our text and our literature, how dead on it is to, I know my story personally, and it is truly written by addicts for addicts, and the proof is right there. Like other incurable diseases, addiction can be arrested. We agree that there is nothing shameful about being an addict. I'm just going to stop right there. That is one thing that many of us have got to get over. This self-talk that we should feel bad, or we do feel bad, or we feel shameful about being an addict. It's proven it's a disease. It's proven that it's not our fault. We cannot carry that blame, that shame, that guilt that will keep us from getting well. Provided we accept our dilemma honestly and take positive action, we are willing to admit without reservation that we are allergic to drugs. Common sense tells us that it would be insane to go back to the source of our allergy. Our experience indicates that medicine cannot cure illness. That goes back to the AA Big Book with Alcoholics Anonymous, where they said, they had an allergy to alcohol. It's the same thing. Ours is derived from theirs, shares many of the same all the same principles, but many of the same, even in the explanation, it's the same thing. Addiction and alcoholism. Some people might get mad at me for it, but they're the same. Either it's just your DOC, your drug of choice. Either it's alcohol or it's other drugs, but the effects are all the same. And again, it's against our control. You can't choose if you're going to be allergic to bees or dairy or anything else. Just like this is an allergy, it's not our choice. Although physical and mental tolerance play a role, many drugs require no extended period of use to trigger the allergic reaction. Our reaction to drugs is what makes us addicts, not how much we use. Again, depending on your DOC, there may be other things that come along with extended use. Opiates, use them for X amount of time, you have the physical dependency. But that's not actually what addiction is. It's what it does here. That allergic reaction where our changing in thought patterns and behaviors changes instantly upon consumption. That's where the addiction factor lies. Many of us did not think that we had a problem with drugs until the drugs ran out. Even when others told us that we had a problem, We were convinced that we were right and the world was wrong. We used this belief to justify our self destructive behaviors. We developed a point of view that enabled us to pursue our addiction without concern of our own well being or the well being of others. We began to feel that the drugs were killing us long before we could ever admit it to anyone else. We noticed that if we tried stopping using, we couldn't. We suspected that we had lost control over drugs and had no power to stop. Self destruction, literally killing myself and continuing to do the same thing. That's the addiction. And it's relentless. And it's, how they say, definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. That's it. And it's that banging your head against the wall day after day after day and not being able to stop. That's where I am an addict, because that is me 100% through and through. Certain things followed as we continued to use. We began accustomed to the state of mind that is common to addicts. We forget what it was like before we started using. We forget about social graces. We acquired strange habits and mannerisms. We forget how to work. We forget how to play. We forget how to express ourselves and how to show concern for others. We forgot how to feel. I use to numb. I use to the state of oblivion. I withdraw from society so much. I am not even on the outskirts. I'm not even there. And all the strange habits and everything. Yeah, I get it. And the worst part about it is normal. Like it said, we forget our previous lives before addiction. All the stuff that we knew, our values, everything goes out the window. And this is my new normal. While using, we lived in another world. We experienced only periodic jolts of reality or self-awareness. It seemed that we were at least two people instead of one, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. We ran around and tried to get our lives together before our next run. Sometimes we would do this very well, but later it was less important and more impossible. In the end, Dr. Jekyll died. Mr. Hyde took over. I always say I'm a Jekyll and Hyde. This is why. It's again, I can't control once I start. That switch happens, and once I flip that switch, it's next to impossible for me to come to a stop. And when I do, it is vital that I stay in that place. I continually work day by day. Recovery isn't a one-time thing. Recovery is a thing that I have to practice day by day, minute by minute, hour by hour for the rest of my life. But the rewards are definitely worth it. Each of us has a few things that we never did. We cannot let these things become excuses to use again. Some of us feel lonely because the differences between us and other members. This feeling makes it difficult to give up our old connections and old habits. Focus on the similarities and not the differences, please. We all have different tolerances of pain. Some addicts needed to go to greater extremes than others. Some of us found that we had enough when we realized that we were getting high too often and it was affecting our daily lives. At first, we were using in a manner that seemed to be social, or at least controllable. We had little indication of the disaster that the future held for us. At some point, our using became uncontrollable and antisocial. This began when things were going well and when we were in situations that allowed us to use frequently. This was usually the end of good times. We may have tried to moderate, substitute, or even stop using. But we went from a straight up drug success and well being to complete spiritual, mental, and emotional bankruptcy. This rate of decline varies from addict to addict. When it occurs in years or days, it's all downhill. Those of us who don't die from the disease will go into prison, mental institutions, or complete demoralization as the disease progresses. And that's how it happened with me. Me and a considerable sized group of friends, all progressed through it, into our addictions together. And that kind of helped fuel the normal feeling about it because I wasn't alone. We were all addicts, are still addicts, those of us who are still here. And we've all progressed and been through the various stages that it speaks in prisons and mental institutions, rehabs, and what have you. Drugs had given us the feeling that we could handle whatever situation might develop. We became aware, however, that drug usage was largely responsible for some of the worst predicaments. Some of us may spend the rest of our lives in jail for a drug related crime. Look, I've been to prison. I've met guys who would not be there if it was not for their addiction. They did things, got caught up in things, were in the wrong place at one wrong time only because they were in active addiction. And now they're never coming home. And it's one of the things that I think of quite often that scares the shit out of me. Drugs have been given. Sorry. We had to reach our bottom before we were willing to stop. When we were finally motivated to seek help in the later stage of our addiction, then it was easier for us to see the destruction, disaster, and delusion from our using. It was harder to deny our addiction when problems were staring us in the face. Some of us saw the effects of our addiction on the people closest to us. We were very dependent on them to carry us through life. We felt angry, disappointed, and hurt when they found other interests, friends, and loved ones. We regretted the past, dreaded the future, and we weren't too thrilled about the present. After years of searching, we were more unhappy and less satisfied than when it all began. The people closest to me hurt the worst. And it's a huge driving factor in my recovery today to be a living amends to the people who I still have around me, as well as the people who are no longer around me. I lost relatives and friends who who never got the chance to see me do good, but I believe they can still see me. And for the people who I am lucky enough to still have in my family, my friends, I do not want to ever put them through this again. So I continue to work hard. I have to recover for myself, but everyone near me will benefit. Same goes for you. Our addiction enslaved us. We were prisoners of our own mind, and we were condemned by our own guilt. We gave up that hope that we would ever stop using drugs. Our attempts to stay clean always failed, causing us pain and misery. Prisoner of my own mind. I've been prisoner many times in physical, real world prisons and jails. But the prison in your mind that you build with guilt and shame and regret and remorse is one of the worst situations you can ever get in. But there's the positive thing to it is we have power to work on that. We have power to get out of that prison and stay out of that prison. But it takes that daily work, as we already talked about. As addicts, we have an incurable disease called addiction. The disease is chronic, progressive, and fatal. However, it is treatable disease. We feel that each individual has to answer the question, am I an addict? How we got the disease is of no immediate importance to us. We are concerned with recovery. The how, the when, the how doesn't matter right now. It doesn't really matter at all. It doesn't matter how we got here. It matters what we're going to do now that we're here. What does your recovery look like? How are we going to stay in recovery? How do I avoid another relapse? How do I avoid making the same decision, the same bad choice, the same mistake over and over and over again? We begin to treat our addiction by not using. Many of us sought answers but failed to find any workable solution until we found each other. Once we identify ourselves as addicts, help becomes possible. We can see a little of ourselves in every addict and then see a little of them in us. This insight lets us help one another. Our future seemed hopeless until we found clean addicts who were willing to share with us. Denial of our addiction kept us sick, but our honest admission of addiction enabled us to stop using. The people of Narcotics Anonymous told us that they were recovering addicts who had learned to live without drugs. If they could do it, so could we. And I remember the first time I heard a lead in rehab where somebody spoke that I identified enough with that I had that thought exactly. If they can do it, I can do it. And that's what started the ball rolling for me in my recovery. The only alternatives to recovery are jails, institution, dereliction, and death. Unfortunately, our disease makes us deny our addiction. If you're an addict, you can find a new way of life through the NA program. We have become very grateful in the course of our recovery. Through abstinence and through working the 12 steps of Narcotics Anonymous, our lives have become useful. We realize that we can never be cured and that we carry the disease within us for the rest of our lives. We have a disease, but we do recover. Each day we are given another chance. We are convinced that there is only one way for us to live, and that is the NA way. Um, you know, there are other programs, there are other ways, but for me, the 12 steps, Narcotics Anonymous, and as well as AA and Alcoholics Anonymous have worked for me. The thing is I can't do it alone. I have to ask for help. I have to be vulnerable and to be humble, and I have to be open, honest, and willing. And I say it all the time. This is not me. This is not typical me. I do this because this is me being accountable. This is me sharing, being honest, being open, and trying to help the next guy as well. So I appreciate it, guys. I will continue to do this. We will work through the book, a video, a chapter. I appreciate everybody for watching. Like, subscribe, share, comment. It helps a lot. And I hope everybody has a great day. And remember, you're not alone. You're worth it. You're loved.